Exposure therapy is hard. If you're looking for a quick fix or a way to make exposure easier, then just click off this video. I think the point I want to get out there first is that exposure therapy is hard. It's really, really hard. But guess what? What you're going through right now is already really hard. Dealing with anxiety every day, having panic attacks, especially constant daily panic attacks, how much worse can it get? In a way, you're already doing exposure just by existing. The only difference is you're not taking advantage of those panic attacks and that constant anxiety. And yes, I really mean taking advantage. But just remember this, there's no quick fix. There's no way to just make exposure easier. You're going to have to do it eventually in some form or another. The only difference is if you don't do it now, you'll still have to do it later. But it'll just be harder because you'll have spent more time in your comfort zone, more time to reinforce your anxiety, more time having panic attacks but not knowing how to interpret them properly to make progress. So if you've made it this far, then yeah, this video probably is for you. And look, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a doctor, so this isn't medical advice. I'm not even saying go do exposure therapy. Go and speak to a therapist, speak to your doctor. That's always the first thing you need to do to get help when you're dealing with anxiety and panic attacks. But as someone who has done exposure successfully and overcame essentially being housebound, calling ambulances every day, going to the hospital emergency room, sleeping in the emergency room because I was so afraid that even home wasn't safe for me. I've been from the very bottom where I thought there's no way I'm getting out of this to doing exposure, and now I'm traveling the world, doing more than I ever thought I would do. So what is exposure and how can we effectively take advantage of that anxiety that we're already experiencing every single day? So first, what is exposure therapy? I think in simplest terms, it's just facing your fears. When you get anxious, the first thing you want to do is to avoid that situation or thing that makes you anxious. If you were in a supermarket and you had a panic attack in a supermarket, the next time you think about or you even go to a supermarket, you'll start feeling those feelings again. And your body will basically be screaming, telling you, no, don't go there. You know what happened last time? It's dangerous there. Do not go. Something's going to happen. And sometimes, maybe you still go and you don't know how to deal with those emotions and you end up having another panic attack. And that makes sense. But if you continue to avoid that situation, the fear around that place or that situation, whatever it may be, will grow. It starts off just the supermarket, then it happens somewhere else, then it happens somewhere else. And then your life gradually shrinks until you're agoraphobic like I was. So exposure is the idea that it's not good to avoid the things that make us anxious. It's a way of actually facing those situations, usually gradually, and sitting with that anxiety. Now, one of the things that I think people misunderstand about exposure is they think that, oh, exposure is me going back to the situation that I'm afraid of or, somewhere that makes me anxious and somehow getting through it and not having a panic attack and having a really good time. No, that's not exposure. They feel like if they panic, then they failed the exposure. And that couldn't be furthest from the truth. In fact, I think it's better if you have a panic attack or two during exposure, and here's why. So think of it like this. If you get constant panic attacks, let's say I'm able to instantly relax you and make you, so relaxed that it's unlikely you'll get a panic attack. Because how panic attacks work is we have a threshold, and once our anxiety reaches that threshold, that is what spills over into a panic attack. That's why a lot of people describe, having anxiety attacks. They're not quite having a sudden panic attack. You're in this state for a while before it spills over into panic. Now, if I could just take away all your stress, and let's say you still have that panic threshold, but you never reach it, one day you will reach it, and you won't know what to do. So you could feel like, oh, I don't have panic attacks anymore because I'm relaxed. I've been doing breathing exercises all day and I'm relaxing as much as I can. But you're still at risk of relapsing. So the point of exposure is that you don't have that threshold anymore because you're so comfortable with those feelings that you experience when you panic. You're so innately aware of it that it doesn't trigger you anymore. And what I mean is we all know that panic attacks are safe. I'm sure a lot of you have panic attacks or even panic disorder. I'm sure a lot of you have been to therapy and you know that panic attacks, yeah, they're not dangerous. Otherwise they'd be called something else. But in that moment, I don't believe it's a panic attack. All these symptoms are coming on so suddenly, I'm terrified. My rationality goes out the window. What am I supposed to do? I just want to get those feelings away as fast as possible. Even if I do know it's a panic attack in the moment, I don't want to feel like that. So get these symptoms away from me. But again, that's the problem. And that's what I meant by we're not taking advantage of the panic that we're having. Because each panic attack is an opportunity to face it. So if you're watching this, an action you can take right now is to just remember that the next time you have a panic attack, try and let it sit out a little bit and let those symptoms happen for you. And you can start really small. It doesn't mean that you have to go to the supermarket if you're terrified of the supermarket. Just think about going to the supermarket. Let those feelings come up and actually let them be there. Or if you're afraid to even leave the house, take a step to the front door and let those feelings fester there for a minute. Without judging them, without trying to get rid of them. Because that's what we always do. And the more we try and get rid of them, the worse they become. So why don't we try the opposite? That's exposure. So remember, the point of exposure is not to avoid experiencing panic attacks. In fact, you want to experience panic attacks so that you can understand them better, so that your body can understand them and realize that you are safe. You might logically know you're safe, but you need to experientially, innately realize that you're safe. Because then, no matter what symptoms you get, a racing heart, palpitations, shortness of breath, you know what that is and your body realizes, oh, I've been here before and I let it happen and it went away. Another big point is that many people will say, okay, so I've done exposure, I've even had panic attacks, I even did something that I'm incredibly afraid of. But it was just traumatizing, I felt terrible. And when I went home, I didn't feel any better. And with that case, what I've noticed, and what I noticed in myself, is that we all do these things called safety behavior. Now, a safety behavior might be something as simple as fidgeting a lot, or it might be holding on to the wall or holding onto the rail because you think you're going to pass out, things like that. Now, when we're feeling anxious and we do these behaviors, that's telling our brains that, hey, because you did that, you survived. Another safety behavior could be, oh, when I have a panic attack, I do a breathing exercise to control my breathing and make sure I don't stop breathing. Even though everyone says, yeah, breathing exercises are great, they're terrible to do in a panic attack because that's a massive safety behavior. If you didn't do that breathing exercise, nothing bad would happen. In fact, I would argue that doing the breathing exercise is probably extending the panic attack because you're trying so hard to control it. And that's what happened with me. I would often try to do breathing exercises and I would just end up having a worse panic attack focusing on my breathing. So safety behaviors are these behaviors that you think make you safer, but in reality they don't, but they do reinforce the idea. They reinforce the anxiety over that situation. And they give you this ritual or habit that you need to do to feel safe, which isn't true. But all it's doing is confirming your anxiety. Let's say I do a breathing exercise with a panic attack and it works. That's good, isn't it? Now I've just taught my brain that whenever I have a panic attack, if I don't do a breathing exercise, I'm going to die. So that panic attack is inherently dangerous. That's not true. Just think about it for a second. What are the safety behaviors you do? It might be calling someone. You might have a panic attack and call a family member or a friend. Okay, I'm having a panic attack, I need to calm down, and they calm you down, and that's great. But is it? Because what's happening there is you're not giving yourself the chance to sit with the panic attack and go through it. You're telling your body and your mind, hey, if my friend doesn't pick up the phone, I'm screwed. That's going to be the worst panic attack I've ever had. And that's exactly what happened to me. Again, I'm just doing this a lot based on my experience. But I remember a time I used to call immediately my dad, I used to call my girlfriend. It even ruined the relationship I had because I would just call my girlfriend every single time I had a panic attack. Whether it was 3 o'clock in the night, there was a time I was having nocturnal panic attacks, I would pick up the phone, I would call. If she did not pick up the phone, that panic went double, triple, 10 times worse than it was if she did pick up the phone. And even if she did pick up the phone, I was still panicking on the phone and it took a while to calm down. Now, if any of these things happen, I'm not doing any calling, I'm not doing anything. Identify those behaviors that could be considered safety behaviors. And when you do exposure, what you want to do is get rid of them. You want to do the exposure without doing the safety behaviors. Now, you don't have to get rid of them all at once. Let's say that you struggle getting public transport. Okay, you can do one stop of public transport and you called your friends to help you and you sat on a certain seat, sat by the door might be a safety behavior. So now I have a choice. Okay, which one of those do I get rid of? Okay, I'm gonna sit by the door, but I'm not gonna call my friend. Or I'm gonna call my friend, but I'm gonna sit in a different part. But eventually you want to get rid of all of them, so I'm not gonna do either. And that's when you'll see the real progress being made. Let's talk about the word panic attack for a second. It's a weird phrase because it involves panicking, yeah? Is it an attack? No, because it's actually something that your body is doing to protect you. So we're quite terrified of all those symptoms that we get when we're panicking, but those are physical responses that we get in what's called the fight or flight response. And again, I believe that everyone I'm talking to here probably knows all of this, but really think about it. That fight or flight response, if there was a danger, you wouldn't focus on the symptoms, you would focus on the danger, and all those things, you would be able to deal with that situation. There's stories of, people seeing a child trapped under a car. They go into fight or flight and they're able to lift the car. This is something that they wouldn't be able to do. Like, there's a lot of stories like this. And that's essentially what's happening. We're going into this mode. And because your vision might change, it might be sharper, or you might feel like you have tunnel vision, you're breathing quicker because you need to get more blood flowing. But it's not an attack. It's a protection. It's a gearing up. It's almost like you're in a superhuman mode. I remember I used to think that, oh, well, what if I panic and I go crazy or I lose control? And it does feel like, because of these sensations, that it feels like you might lose control. But never in my life have I lost control during a panic attack, even if I've had panic while driving. In fact, I drove better and I was able to maneuver without even realizing what I was doing and get into a safe position. Probably even better than if I was just relaxed. So it's not an attack. It's not something dangerous. And we have this way of considering panic attacks like they are something terrible and dangerous. But this is definitely something to think about. What is a panic attack? Because it's not an attack. Now, I spoke earlier about taking gradual steps. And I think that is, the best way to go about it. But I think that there are times where we can again, get comfortable with these little gradual steps. And I believe that there are times that call for bigger challenges. Because what you're doing when you build up with these small steps, if you're building a level of confidence, you're showing yourself that you can take challenges and you can push through and embrace anxiety and panic. But sometimes I believe that you need to use that to take a bigger step. And I'll give you an example. When I started driving again, I would get in my car and I'd drive up the road and back down. Then the next day, I would drive to the next road and just do a little circle. And then I'd try 2 roads and okay, that was too much. I was really panicking a bit. And as I'm supposed to, I pushed through the panic and let it happen. I thought, wow, that feels amazing. Then I drove 3 roads. Now, eventually there came a time where there was somewhere further that I needed to go. Now, I could have enacted one of my usual safety behaviors. I could have brought someone to go along with me. I could have just took a cab if I felt like I couldn't drive. I could have done many different things to make that easier. And if I decided to say, okay, well, I'm going to keep doing an extra road, that would have taken years. Eventually, I had to gather everything I've learned. And I started driving, and I came to a big road that I hadn't practiced. And I started having a panic attack, quite a huge panic attack. I was driving behind the wheel. I think it was like 3-lane road, only about 40 miles an hour. But I hadn't done that. I'd barely topped 20 in my practice. And my heart was racing. I started getting palpitations. I started getting derealization. I started getting out of breath. I started looking around. I was like, I'm going to crash this car and I'm going to kill someone. I'm in so much danger. My heart was racing and I kept going, kept driving. And I said, I'm just going to be safe. And I started realizing, okay, I didn't die yet, but I'm still driving. Hey, I'm getting closer. Hey, there's the exit I need to get off. I basically turned that panic into excitement. And I pushed through that panic and I reinterpreted what those symptoms meant. It was hard. It was scary, but I felt that was one of the best feelings I had felt in years. Thanks to the panic attack. Do I look back on that panic attack and say, oh, I wish I never had that? No, I wish I did have that. And I'm thankful I had that. Because now look where I am. And you will have moments like these. And sometimes you'll back down, and that's okay. but sometimes you'll push through. And then you'll come back and comment on this video and say, Peter, I had my driving panic moment like you did, and I pushed through, and now look where I am. But let's talk about that as well for a second. So let's say I had this big panic attack, I made it through. What do you say when you have a panic attack and either you escape or maybe, something happens and it gets, you get out of the situation? I bet a lot of you say, I survived. I had this panic attack, but I survived, I'm okay. Whew, I survived that panic attack. Remember when we talked about panic attacks and they're not really attacks? They're not actually something that you survive because they're just your body trying to prepare you for a situation. You didn't survive anything. And this also is a really important point. I had to reframe every time I had a panic attack, and I would think about it and talk about it as, oh, I survived this situation. I didn't survive anything. I was never in danger. I need to know that, and my body needs to know that. So again, what did you survive? This is something that we really need to stop telling ourselves. So now that we've realized that, okay, you had a panic attack, you made it through, you go over it, you didn't survive, you just continued. How do we relate this back to exposure? What do we do when we're doing exposure? We go through this immense panic attack. We make it through. We have the best realization, the best learning. We realize that we're safe. We realize that we can do it. What do? Do you take a break? Do you celebrate? Do you relax? This is a really important one. Because for me, when I had finally a really great exposure, I had a panic attack. I pushed through the panic attack. I didn't avoid it. I learned something innately that would reduce my anxiety overall and reduce the possibility and intensity of proper panic attacks. I felt incredible, and I would give myself a break. I would say, okay, that was rough. That was exhausting. It felt good, but it's exhausting. It takes a toll on you. I'm gonna go 2 days. I'm not gonna do anything. I'm gonna relax. I'm gonna eat junk food. I'm just gonna do everything that makes me really comfortable as a reward. Please let me have made that mistake for you and don't do that. I'm gonna tell this in a kind of tough love way. You don't deserve a break. You have been dealt these cards of having anxiety, having panic attacks, and you now have to go through them and face your fears. This isn't some moral problem. This is because if you give yourself a break, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Once we get through this and we learn it, it will improve. But the mind is a muscle, we all know that. And if you're in the position where you have to do exposure, there's no time for you to rest because you're still ingrained in those thinking patterns that make anxiety thrive. Now, I'm not saying don't reward yourself and don't take a day off here and there because we're human and we need to do that. But if you have what you consider a successful exposure, your reward is the fact that you're now able to do more. Your reward, if you had struggled leaving your house and you finally made it up the road on the high street, your reward is now you get to take it a step further and go into a shop. Your reward is that you can do more. Your reward is not, oh, I'm going to go home and I'm going to take a few days off. That is what will shoot you in the foot. And I had this happen to me. I got on a plane for the first time since having agoraphobia and panic disorder. I got on an airplane. Really outdid myself. I didn't realize that I would be able to do that. I was getting on the plane, I was like, okay, look, I might die and I'm just gonna go, I'm gonna have a panic attack, let's go, let's do it. I did that trip, I came back, it was exhausting. I was so proud of myself, but I was exhausted. I said, I am not doing anything. I can go and do stuff, but I deserve a break. I had a break. 2 months later, I was crying on the couch, couldn't go to my doctor's appointment. Because I didn't do a single thing after that. When I was in the easiest position and I could have, so easily, because of what I had done. So that's all I've got for today. Remember, exposure isn't about hiding from anxiety, not having panic attacks. In fact, you need to have them. Every moment counts. You could be doing exposure right now. Anxiety and panic are not your enemies, so stop treating them like that. Each time you face it, and each time you reevaluate that interpretation of those symptoms, of those emotions, you will gain confidence. You are stronger than this, and I truly believe that everyone watching here has the ability and potential to get out of whatever hole you're in. So keep going. You got this, and I'll see you next time.